I was just returning a book I borrowed. That's all it was supposed to be. But when she looked at me, really looked, it felt like she saw something I hadn't figured out yet. She was older, calm, impossible to read, and somehow that made me stay. I didn't know then that one conversation would change the way I understood silence, regret, and love itself. I was just returning what I borrowed. That's all it was supposed to be. A book. The bell jar, its corners still faintly folded from where I'd stopped reading. She had lent it to me 2 weeks ago when the rain had trapped me inside her little bookstore/repair shop. The kind of place that smells like dust, varnish, and coffee that's been sitting a little too long. Her name was Clara. Everyone in town called her Ms. Hale, but the name never quite fit her. It sounded too formal, too neat, like a label someone put on a jar long after the contents had changed. When I stepped inside that afternoon, the bell above the door gave a weak jingle. The same sound that had pulled me in the first time. The same sound that made me look up and see her again. She was behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, fixing an old reading lamp with a screwdriver. Her hair was half-tied, a few strands slipping loose, catching the light that fell through the window. She didn't look up right away. I was just returning what I borrowed, I said, setting the book on the counter. Were you? Her voice was calm, but something about the way she said it made the air slow down. She looked up then, eyes soft but sharp, the kind that see more than you expect them to. Because it looks like you underlined half the pages. I felt my ears go warm. Sorry. I'll buy a new copy. No, she said, closing the book gently. I like seeing what people mark. It's honest. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. There was something about her tone. Unguarded, like she'd said more than she meant to. I tried to focus on the shop around us. The shelves packed tight, the record player humming softly in the corner. A fan turned lazily above us, scattering the smell of old paper. Did you like it? She asked. The book. She smiled small, knowing. No. The silence you borrow every time you come here. I looked at her then properly. The way her fingers brushed the edge of the lamp. The faint ink mark on her wrist. The steadiness of her posture, even when the silence stretched. I like quiet places, I said finally. Most people say that, she murmured, twisting the screwdriver. But most people can't stand what they hear when it gets quiet. Her words lingered longer than they should have. She didn't look at me when she said them. It wasn't a challenge, just a truth spoken out loud by someone who'd spent too much time alone. The lamp flickered to life. She switched it off and on again, testing it, her face softening as the light steadied. I didn't fix it perfectly, she said, but it works. That's enough. She could have been talking about the lamp, or herself, or maybe both. I wanted to ask her how long she'd had this place, why she never seemed to leave it, what made her eyes look like they carried unfinished sentences. But I didn't. Instead, I said, you should charge more for repairs. Then you'd stop coming by, she replied almost too quickly. Our eyes met for half a heartbeat, the kind of moment that feels like it could become something, if either of us dared to breathe wrong. Then she looked away, pretending to stack receipts, and I took that as my cue to leave. As I reached the door, she called after me, her voice softer now. You took more than that, she said. I turned, confused. The silence, she added. You always take a bit of it with you. She smiled, almost to herself, then went back to her work. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. A week passed before I went back. I told myself it was for another repair. A busted turntable I found at a yard sale, but even I didn't buy that lie. The bell above her shop door gave its usual tired jingle, and there she was again, Clara behind the counter, a cardigan draped loosely over her shoulders, glasses resting low on her nose. She was reading something this time, pen in hand, margin notes scattered like private thoughts she never said out loud. You again, she said without looking up. What's broken this time? I held up the turntable. This. Thought you might know how to bring it back to life. Her mouth curved, not quite a smile, but something close. I fix books, not nostalgia. Seems like you fix both. That made her glance up. The look she gave me wasn't sharp, just searching, like she was checking whether I meant it or not. She motioned for me to set it down. Let's see what you've got. For a while, it was just the sound of tools and quiet music from the radio. I watched her hands, steady, precise, as she worked the small screws loose. Her fingers were ink-stained again. She smelled faintly of coffee and something like cedarwood. Does it ever feel strange? I asked. Being here all day? She paused, the screwdriver hovering midair. Strange. I mean alone, in the same space, every day. She gave a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. It's easier to be alone when you know no one's waiting for you. The room felt smaller after that. I wanted to say something, to reach for the right words, but she changed the subject before I could. Hold that wire for me. I stepped closer and she leaned in. For a moment, her shoulder brushed my arm. Nothing dramatic, just contact. But it sent a quiet, invisible spark through the air. Neither of us acknowledged it. We didn't have to. You're good at this, I said softly. I've had practice, she replied, focusing on the wiring. Things fall apart more often than they should. The turntable stuttered to life, spinning slowly. She exhaled, relieved, then pulled her hand back. Too quickly, like she'd touched something hot. You did most of it, she said, stepping away. No, I said. You did. She shook her head but didn't argue. Instead, she walked toward the back counter, wiping her hands on a cloth. For a moment, I just watched her. The way she carried herself, calm but guarded, like she was always ready to step out of reach if someone came too close. I used to dance, she said suddenly, not turning around. The sentence came out of nowhere. What stopped you? I asked. Life, she said simply, her tone flat, but the way her shoulders stiffened gave her away. I didn't push. We stood there in the sound of the faint record hiss, the air between us thick with something neither of us wanted to name. Then she turned, eyes meeting mine, tired, kind, unsure. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. It started raining that evening. A slow, steady drizzle that painted the town in soft gray. I hadn't planned to stop by Clara's shop. I was just passing through, umbrella half broken, when I saw her light still on long after closing hours. I hesitated outside, watching her through the fogged window. She was sitting on the floor near a stack of old records, barefoot, hair unpinned, a glass of red wine beside her. It didn't feel right to interrupt, but something about that quiet scene drew me in. I pushed the door open. The bell gave its lonely ring. She looked up, surprised. You're drenched. So are the streets, I said, shaking off the umbrella. Her laugh came out softer than usual, almost like it surprised her too. You shouldn't be here this late. Neither should you. That made her pause. Touché. I sat near the counter, pretending I had a reason. You look different when the shop's quiet. She raised an eyebrow. Is that a compliment or an observation? I don't know yet. She smiled at that, then gestured toward the turntable, the same one we'd fixed together. It's playing again, though it skips every few minutes. I like it that way, I said. It feels human. The rain filled the silence that followed. She took a sip of her wine, then set the glass down beside me. The gesture was small but disarming, like sharing space meant more than either of us would admit. You ever feel like you're waiting for something without knowing what? I asked. She looked at me for a long time before answering. Every day. The words hit something deep. There was a fragile honesty in them. Not performative, not poetic, just real. We didn't move closer, but the air between us did. I noticed the faint tremor in her fingers when she brushed her hair back, the way her eyes lingered on mine half a second too long. The record skipped again, and we both laughed softly, too aware of how near we were. Then her phone buzzed, a low, distant vibration that cut through the quiet. She didn't check it. The name on the screen flashed once before fading. Evan. Her expression shifted, just slightly but enough. You should probably answer, I said. No, she murmured. Not tonight. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Like if she spoke louder, something delicate might break. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was full of everything we weren't saying. I could feel it, the pull. The way her hand rested near mine on the floor. The way her breathing slowed just enough that I matched it without meaning to. My hand was halfway to hers when she said, "You should go now." And I did. But only my body left that room. For 3 days, I didn't see her. I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd only gone to her shop for repairs, for conversation, for something simple. But the truth was, every time I passed that street, I slowed down just enough to check if the lights were on. They weren't. Not until Thursday evening. The bell above the door sounded sharper than usual when I finally walked in. She was there. Standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at nothing. The shop felt different. Colder. "You disappeared," I said. "I was here," she replied, not turning around. "No, you weren't." She sighed quietly, then faced me. Her eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from holding something in too long. "I needed space," she said. "Things were starting to blur." Blur. You know what I mean. I didn't. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to hear it said out loud. She walked behind the counter, rearranging books that didn't need rearranging. "You're young. You should be anywhere else but here on a Thursday night, talking to a woman who doesn't know what she wants. That's not fair." "It's true." Her voice trembled slightly on the last word. She steadied it with a forced smile. "You think this is something it's not." "I never said what it was," I answered. "Exactly." Silence. The kind that fills a room until it feels like sound itself might break. The clock ticked. The air smelled faintly of dust and rain. She leaned against the counter, finally meeting my eyes, and for a second all the defenses she built seemed to flicker. "I don't know what we're doing," she said softly. "Neither do I. But it's not right." I wanted to step closer, to tell her it wasn't wrong either, that maybe it just was. But my words wouldn't come. My throat felt tight, my palms cold. "I keep thinking," she continued, voice low, "that you remind me of the person I used to be before life started correcting me." I didn't know what to say to that. I just stood there, my heart doing that uneven thing it did when she looked at me too long. "You shouldn't have to fix people, Clara," I said. She smiled, but it was a fragile thing, like it could shatter if I breathed too close. "And yet," she said, "I keep trying." She stepped around the counter, close enough that I could see the tiny crease by her mouth, the faint tremor in her jaw. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. "You're not." "I already am." Her hand almost lifted, almost touched my face, but stopped halfway, trembling in the space between us. Then she let it fall. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. The next time I saw Clara, she wasn't behind the counter. She was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, an open box of old photographs beside her. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the low rustle of paper as she shuffled through memories. She looked up when she heard me. "You shouldn't sneak in like that. You left the door unlocked." "Did I?" she murmured, half smiling. "Maybe I was hoping someone would walk in." I sat down beside her, careful not to step on the scattered pictures. Some were black and white, others sun-faded, the edges curled. I noticed one photo she kept returning to, a man with an easy smile, his arm around her younger self. "He's the one who called, isn't he?" I asked quietly. Her hand stilled. "You saw that?" "Yeah." She nodded slowly. "His name's Evan. We were married once. He left. A long time ago." She set the photo aside, her voice steady but soft. "When he called the other night, I thought maybe time had finally done its job. That I could hear him and feel nothing." "And did you?" She looked down. I felt relief, but not because I forgave him, because I realized I didn't want him back. I stayed quiet. The moment didn't need words. After a while, she leaned her head against the wall, eyes closed. "He said I'd grown cold, that I'd stopped loving the way I used to." Maybe he was right. Maybe I built this shop so I could fix everything but myself. Her voice caught slightly. I'd never heard that from her. Not the calm, practiced tone she usually wore like armor, but the fragile one beneath it. You remind me of what warmth used to feel like, she said, eyes still closed. That's the problem. It doesn't have to be. It does, she said, opening her eyes. Because when you leave, and you will, I'll have to lose it all over again. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't going anywhere, that she wasn't some temporary season in my life. But part of me knew she didn't need promises. She needed truth. So I said quietly, maybe it's not about losing. Maybe it's just about remembering what it felt like to be alive. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then something in her face softened. The kind of softness that comes after a long storm, tired, but open. She took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And for the first time, she looked at me without fear. The days after that felt different. Not louder, not brighter, just different. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was almost gentle, like both of us had stopped pretending not to need it. I started helping around the shop more, fixing shelves, sorting old records, even learning how to rebind paperbacks. Clara didn't ask. She just let me. Sometimes she'd pass me a cup of coffee without a word. Sometimes I'd find her humming quietly to herself, unaware that I was watching. It wasn't love, not in the way people talk about it. It was something smaller, slower, like learning to breathe in a room that used to choke you. One evening, I came in to find her sitting at the front desk, a single lamp casting that soft amber light she always liked. A storm was rumbling somewhere far away. You could hear it in the glass. "You're early," she said, without looking up. I didn't want to miss the quiet. She smiled faintly. "You've started to sound like me. Maybe that's not such a bad thing." She closed her book and looked at me, eyes thoughtful. "You know this doesn't have a name, right?" "I know. And that whatever it is, it can't last." "I know that too." We didn't argue. There was nothing to win. The rain finally reached us. Slow at first, then steady, tapping the windows like fingers on a drum. She got up and walked to the window, arms folded. I followed, stopping just close enough to see our reflections side by side. "Sometimes," she said, her voice barely above the rain, "I wish I'd met you when I still believed in beginnings." I swallowed. "And sometimes I wish I'd met you before I started mistaking endings for normal." She turned her head slightly, just enough to look at me. Really look. Her eyes were soft but steady. The kind of gaze that didn't ask for anything, only offered. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. Maybe the silence pushed us forward. Her hand brushed mine, light as a question. I didn't pull away. Neither did she. The air between us thinned until the sound of the rain filled every space words couldn't. She leaned her forehead against mine. Just once. A quiet, fragile moment that said everything we couldn't say out loud. We stayed like that, not kissing, not confessing. Just breathing the same uncertain air, as if holding still could keep time from catching us. When she finally stepped back, her voice was barely there. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down. And that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. It's been months since that night. The one with the rain and the silence that said more than words ever could. Clara still runs the shop. I still stop by, but not every day anymore. She says the quiet feels lighter now, that she's learning how to be alone without being lonely. Sometimes I help her rearrange the shelves or fix something small, but mostly we just sit. No tension, no pretense. Just the kind of peace you earn after too many storms. She doesn't talk about us, not directly. She doesn't need to. It's in the way she hands me coffee, no hesitation this time, or how she looks up from a book just to check if I'm still there. It's quieter now, whatever we were. But it's real. I've stopped trying to define it. Maybe we were two people who crossed paths at the exact moment we both needed to remember what it felt like to be seen. Maybe that's all love ever really is, not forever. Just a few moments when the noise in your head goes still. Once, she asked me if I regretted any of it. I told her no. I told her that sometimes the best things don't fit into the shape we want them to. They just find us, change us, and leave us softer. She smiled, the way she does when she's trying not to show she's moved. You grew up here, she said, in this shop, without realizing it. Maybe she was right. Maybe we both did. Now, when I walk past the window, I can see her inside, hair up, sleeves rolled, fixing something again. She doesn't always notice me, and I don't always go in. Some days, it's enough just to know she's there. Sometimes, though, she catches my reflection in the glass. And when our eyes meet, she gives that small, wordless smile. The one that started it all. Feels like a memory still breathing. I used to think I'd fallen for an older woman. That was the easy story to tell. But looking back now, it wasn't about age. It was about timing. About finding someone who understood the ache of living halfway between what you want and what you're allowed to have. She once told me, people don't always stay, but sometimes they leave something better behind. I think I know what she meant now. I didn't just fall for an older woman. I fell into something rare, something true. And I hope, if you're listening, you find something like that too. If the story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?